You move to Spain, settle your taxes, feel organized for the first time in months, and then someone drops 4 words that instantly raise your blood pressure. Modelo 720. Not a tax you pay, not a form that costs money directly, but a declaration that has scared expats out of sleep, out of investments, and sometimes out of Spain itself, because for years it was associated with insane fines and horror stories that spread faster than facts. My name is Hector, and I work with expats who want to separate real obligations from outdated panic, especially when it comes to Form 720. The problem is not that Form 720 exists, because many countries require asset disclosures, but that Spain enforced it so aggressively in the past that its reputation never recovered, even after the rules changed. People still believe they can be fined more than the value of their assets, even when that is no longer legally possible. And that misunderstanding leads to fear-driven decisions that cost far more than the form ever would. Stay until the end, because once you understand who actually has to file, what the thresholds really are, and what the European Court ruling removed forever, you will know whether Form 720 applies to you or whether you can safely stop worrying about it. Form 720 is not a tax return. It does not calculate tax due, and it does not automatically trigger a payment. It is an informational declaration that Spain requires from tax residents to report certain assets held outside Spain. The entire purpose of the form is disclosure, not collection, which is an important mental shift if you have only heard the horror stories. If you are not a Spanish tax resident, Form 720 does not apply to you at all. This form is strictly for people Spain considers tax residents, meaning you meet the residency criteria and are taxed on worldwide income. Non-residents do not file it, even if they own assets abroad. Now let us talk about what actually needs to be reported, because this is where clarity replaces fear. Form 720 is divided into 3 separate asset categories. The first category is bank accounts held outside Spain. The second category is investments, such as shares, funds, bonds, and insurance products held abroad. The third category is real estate and rights over real estate located outside Spain. Each category has its own reporting threshold. You are only required to file Form 720 if the total value of assets in any one category exceeds 50,000 euros. This is not cumulative across categories. It is per category. That means having 40,000 euros in a foreign bank account, 40,000 in investments, and 40,000 in foreign property does not trigger the obligation, because no single category exceeds the threshold. This is one of the most misunderstood points. Many people believe that crossing 50,000 euros in total foreign assets triggers Form 720, when in reality, it is category specific. For most regular expats with modest savings or one foreign account, this alone removes the obligation entirely. If you do exceed 50,000 euros in one category, you must report that category in Form 720. You do not have to report the others unless they also exceed the threshold. Once filed, you do not file it again every year automatically. You only file again if the value in a reported category increases by more than 20,000 euros compared to the last declaration, or if you sell or dispose of assets previously declared. Now we need to address the elephant in the room, because this is where most fear comes from. For years, Spain imposed extremely severe penalties for late or missing Form 720 filings, including fines that could exceed the value of the undeclared assets. This enforcement regime was challenged, and the European Court of Justice ruled that these penalties were disproportionate and illegal under EU law. As a result of that ruling, the confiscatory fines are gone. Spain can no longer impose automatic penalties that dwarf the assets themselves, and the worst-case scenarios that fueled the panic are no longer legally enforceable. This does not mean there are no penalties at all, but it does mean they are now aligned with standard tax penalty principles instead of punishment by example. This change is crucial because it shifts Form 720 from a legal nightmare into what it actually is, a strict but manageable reporting obligation. Ignoring it is still a mistake, but fearing it irrationally is just as costly. So how do you actually file it if you need to? The form is filed electronically through the Spanish tax agency's online system, and it is typically due between January and March following the year being reported. You identify the asset category, provide details about each asset, such as bank name, account balance at year-end, or property acquisition value, and submit the declaration. There is no payment attached to the form. It simply informs the tax authorities of the existence and value of the assets. The complexity is administrative, not mathematical, which is why accuracy matters more than speed. The biggest mistake people make is assuming they do not need to file because they already declared income from those assets elsewhere. Income declaration and asset disclosure are separate obligations. Another common mistake is filing unnecessarily out of fear, declaring assets that are below thresholds or misclassifying categories, which creates confusion rather than protection. If you are a Spanish tax resident, the correct approach is simple. Identify whether you exceed 50,000 euros in any of the three categories. If you do, file accurately and on time. If you do not, do nothing and keep documentation in case your situation changes. Form 720 is no longer the monster it once was, but it is still a form Spain expects you to respect. The difference between a problem and a non-event is knowing whether it applies to you, and most expats who actually understand the rules realize that either they do not need to file at all, or that filing it once correctly removes the fear permanently, because the real danger was never the form itself, but not knowing where you stand when Spain decides it is time to ask.